Thank you guys for coming on a 6 o'clock on a Friday night in Vegas. I know how badly you want the extra credit. That's why I see all the familiar faces here this evening. There's no John. You're lucky. Come on up.
I hope this microphone works all right for me so that I can turn pages and speak at the same time. All right, very good. Does that work? Maybe I don't even need the mic. It's coming. All right, whatever. I'd like to read from my novel trilogy that took some time to write and took some time to get published for sure. It's entitled Letters from Alaska, and it's book 1, 2, and 3, and I'd like to read from book 3, which basically the setting is the Alaska in the 60s, before the oil and after statehood, when the whole territory was beginning to fade into obscurity. That is vis-a-vis people down here in the lower 48. The people up there, of course, were very glad for this. It was a great time, great period. A new frontier sort of situation with a lot of colorful characters and colorful situations. But then, so that's what we're looking at. We've got two couples. One is the main couple, Ansley and Suzanne. They're up on the Yukon River. They're camped there temporarily, waiting for a plane to pick them up. Their friend, Lynn, who's already made a trip up to the Brooks Range, a light plane. He's taken Valerie and their wolf dog. And they're waiting for him to return and pick them up the next day. They have a wild house cat named Xerxes. He's king of the Persians. And they're on the river, and one of the main things that's going on is that after a long, difficult winter, the river is beginning to break up. So here we go. Letters from Alaska, Book 3, Part 5. To her surprise and Ansley's mild curiosity, Suzanne spent a goodly portion of their day's wait down along the riverbank watching the ice pack. Can everybody hear me? She felt quite profoundly and mysteriously that things were happening and going to happen. The line of free water along the shore had widened considerably, absorbing the recent snow and rising through cracks to force onto the surface ever larger racing swaths. Who knew the power behind it, the will, compounded of mass and distance? She could feel it. Thus the time passed easily, as did her impatience with Ansley sleeping back at the campsite. He did look truly mummified in his bag, coiled within the olive drab, its lower portion still dark from where the snow had soaked it. She'd come up for coffee every now and again, then return to the spot, Xerxes following, and occasionally take up her copy of psychological types. When Ansley finally rose along about noon, he was happy to join her with his cup and dry victuals. He enjoyed squatting at the lapping edge, drinking liberally and doing limited ablutions till hands and face turned numb. Others too had taken positions down the bank below the village, maybe 6 or 8 people on benches and stools watching the river. What if he doesn't make it back? Who, she asked. Lynn. You mean if they have an accident? I don't think it'll happen, said Ansley. It just doesn't seem to be his fate. But what if for some reason they just don't return and we hear nothing? I mean, it's not like our communications are easy in this part of the world. We've just been delayed a couple of days because we stopped off at Piggly Wiggly. I mean, do you feel stranded? No, I'm thinking about my grandmother. Right. Boy, that seems like another life. She was ill, and we haven't heard. My father never mentioned anything in any of his living. He hasn't written for so long. Yes, I remember. Visited them in Pennsylvania. When the hell was it? Goodness, last June, not a year, and it seems like 2 lifetimes ago. Her demeanor was just like the old man's, and if you looked closely enough and thought about it, her sitting in the chair on the back porch, you'd say that's him for sure in 30 years. His impiety jogged her. No, she told him, I don't feel stranded here at all. I catch a right, he said. We have small ones coming in here once or twice a week. Have to have money. Would we have enough money? Might have to work a while, that is, if you wanted to get back. But it's funny, how long do you report them missing? Day after tomorrow, 2 days? I mean, if there's no Lynn, no call, we're standing out there searching the skies, the vastness, a week. From upriver came a small, crackling sound like rifle fire. That's the ice, remarked Ansley softly, and with great excitement. And both scanned downriver. Yes, things were happening. Nah, Lynn'll make it, Ansley continued after a time. I really have little doubt, within an hour of when we'd expect it. And when's that? 2 hours after dawn, 2 hours after the time they left this morning. Within an hour of that, you'll want to turn right around and head back, take advantage of the ice before afternoon. Where are we going anyway? Jack Creek. Jack Creek? Jack Creek, repeated Ansley with a laugh, overstretching the first syllable and pronouncing the second with a short eye. Could be it for us, babe. His tone was still jocular. Don't call me babe. Why not? You could call me that and I wouldn't mind. It's an endearment. I'm sure. What are you reading in that book that I didn't learn in high school? Introvert, extrovert, I know all about that. I learned it in a course they call social problems. She ignored him. Jack Creek's in the Brooks Range. It comes out of the mountains and flows into a mighty river called the Tolchak, which thence rages ultimately to the Beaufort Sea, which as far as I know is part of the Arctic Ocean. Ansley stretched out hand with elbow on a nice bit of dry sand. Suzanne read. Xerxes, who gorged himself on leftover salmon, came down to inspect the area. Lynn says it's probably one of the 2 or 3 most spectacular places in Alaska. Great high mountains, good trees, game aplenty, even sheep with a horn spread of 50 inches, from tip of curl to tip of flaring curl. I mean, it could be it for us. His tone turned more serious. He twisted round to look up at her. Imagine a place where you could actually become self-sufficient, self-realized. You'd be free. Nobody, nothing would ever have any hold on you again. Even if someone wanted you badly enough to come after you, they'd never find you. It would be your own place, hundreds of square miles. It would take care of you. It would be infinitely fascinating. At every turn, there'd be a view or a sound, some combination of things you'd never experienced before. A grandeur, a purity, a way onto something that even most pathetic of them out there would have to admit is significant and unpredictable. What have they got compared to it? The fact alone is really quite wonderful. A clear, verifiable fact that such a place still exists. It's almost like the obvious, foregone conclusion to a great quest that I've been on. We mentioned last summer, do you realize that in point of fact this whole thing began pretty much less than a year ago? How does that do to your normal conception of time? It makes it pretty silly, doesn't it? Anyway, and here Ansley simply had to jerk up with a laugh onto his forearm. Come all this way through a damn universe of grief, really, to prove the obvious, that such a place as Jack Creek really exists. I can see Lynn shaking his head, smiling a little, saying, well, of course, Ansley. That's right, I can see him doing that. Said, well, what do you think? What do you think about Jack Creek? I see him look up again on hearing a single piercing crack issuing from somewhere, this time well up and across river. Even Ansley sat up, and after checking the folks along the bank downstream and seeing a couple of them pointing well beyond his and Suzanne's position, turned as well to watch. The river indeed was breaking up. Several more singular, gigantic cracking sounds ensued. Then massive chunks of ice could be seen rising in the distance and heaving themselves over the main sheet with